Hello YouTube! Welcome back for the third video of the Indie Films DIY filming gear and techniques vlogging series. I'm Shirish and today I'll be talking about the popular Canon DSLR, the 60D, why I chose it for my filmmaking projects and why I believe it is a balance of everything for being one of the best filmmaking cameras for beginner filmmakers out there. Since digital filmmaking started to become mainstream, Canon DSLRs have been leading the market to provide DSLR cameras that can give you the best cinematic footage for your filmmaking projects. In the last decade, other manufacturers have caught up, and I can definitely give a big mention to Sony and Panasonic for doing very well in the competition. However, Canon DSLRs are probably still the most popular solutions for most filmmakers out there. When we see professionals use a Canon DSLR for filmmaking, we often see them with the higher end cameras like the 5D Mark III or even the newer 5D Mark IV. However, these cameras are quite expensive and not in the reach of every beginner filmmaker. So what camera would be best for you when you are starting out? Well, that depends on your needs, but I myself found that Canon 60D was and is one of the best middle ground solutions for a beginner filmmaker. Let us go through the reason why I give this verdict to the Canon EOS 60D DSLR. Canon develops a variety of DSLRs. The conventional naming system for the DSLR range has been that a single digit model like the 5D, 6D and 7D are the Pro DSLRs. The two digit models like the 60D, the 70D and the 80D are the mid-range enthusiast ones. And finally the three digit models like the 550D, 600D and 700D, and they also come by other names like T3i and so on, are the amateur range models. Now if you are a starting filmmaker and you are really just starting out with DSLR photography or filmmaking, the cheapest Canon DSLR that can shoot 1080p video might just be enough for you. However, in my opinion, getting the mid-range by paying just a little extra is worth it, as a DSLR camera is something that might be a bit of a long-term investment anyway. Also, I strongly suggest people on a budget to consider getting a used 60D. Since newer mid-range models like 70D and 80D have been released, the 60D in the used market is selling for less than what the amateur models would cost when bought new. Just make sure you read descriptions and buy it from a trusted source so you get a camera that is in a good working order. So this is my 60D over here. So it's a fine camera. Well, it's probably just slightly bigger and heavier than the beginner series and probably just smaller and lighter than the Pro series. So again, it's a middle ground and it's very well constructed. 60D itself does not come in the magnesium alloy body, it comes in a plastic body. I think 70D and 80D are magnesium alloy bodies, but the plastic body is very well built and it feels very rugged. So I bought my 60D very recently for less than 320 Australian dollars on eBay, and it is as good as new. The next thing to consider is if we are paying a little extra to get the mid-range instead of the beginner range, why not pay a little bit more to get the Pro range? Well, firstly, they're quite expensive. If you consider a used older version camera, then yes, maybe you can get one for a similar price, like the older 5D Mark II or the 7D Mark I. However, there are a few reasons why I would suggest 60D over these models for beginners. Firstly, models like 5D and 6D are full frame. Yes, full frame cameras means bigger sensors, which means better at low light, slightly shallower depth of field, etc. However, for filmmaking, one of the most desired things in digital cinematography is matching what is known as the conventional film look. And while the full frame sensor is similarly sized to the 35mm film used in still photography, the 35mm motion picture film, also called the Super 35, is actually smaller, and the APS-C sensor found on 60D and other mid-range cameras, it more closely resembles this format. Also, full frame cameras will need full frame compatible lenses, which means you have a smaller range of more expensive lenses to choose from. Yes, there is that one model, the 7D, the 70 Mark 1, not the Mark 2, because Mark 2, well, it is as well, but it's expensive again, so we're not discussing it. 70 Mark 1, if you were to buy it used, yes, it has the APS-C size sensor, so why not that then? Well, this brings me to another problem with these pro range cameras for beginners. Most of them support only the CF cards for storage, unlike the 60D and similar cameras that used the SD card. So here, the SD card. Now SD cards are much cheaper to buy and smaller in size. CF cards are fast, yes, but unless you are planning to use firmware hacks like Magic Lantern to try and shoot RAW, again, you won't be able to shoot really high resolutions like 1080p. Then the speed might be relevant. Otherwise, the speed of the SD cards are more than enough for video. So while you might think that a used 70 Mark 1 is coming for the same price or similar price as a used 60D, you will have to pay more to invest on CF cards. Most of the times we might already have SD cards, if especially already owned a DSLR, a cheaper DSLR in the past. So I think that's another good reason to go with the 60D. Keeping all this in mind, if you have the money or can buy it on like a plan or something, if you're buying a new camera and therefore ready to spend a few more bucks, then 60D has been superseded by 70D and the even newer 80D. So yes, buy those. However, sticking to the rhetoric of saving money as a beginner but still getting a good enough camera, nothing can beat the 60D at the moment. If you save a few $100s in going for 60D instead of more expensive alternatives, then you can spend that on other things you will need. Like as a beginner filmmaker, you will be needing a few good lenses, a video mic, an ND filter, tripod, etc. Now that hopefully I have reasoned my argument of 60D over other DSLRs for a beginner filmmaker, how about the mirrorless options? Well, they are lighter, they are smaller, but unfortunately they have their drawbacks. Firstly, being smaller cameras, they use smaller size batteries, which usually tends to give you slightly lower battery life. The 60D uses the popular LPE6 type batteries, which look like this. So the LPE6 type batteries are very common. So those are the batteries that are used in all big DSLR cameras like 5D and 7D, etc. So they are bigger and last longer slightly. And there are more third-party options available when you buy third-party batteries, which are usually cheaper. You don't have to go for the cheapest, which might not be like a really good battery, but you can get like third-party, good manufacturer third-party options, and there are much more options for the LPA6 than LPE8 or the batteries used by other smaller DSLRs. The other, and for me the biggest problem, is that the Canon mirrorless cameras come with the EF-M mount instead of the EF mount. The EF mount is standard in Canon DSLRs. It's slightly bigger. While this has its benefit too, like for someone starting out, these benefits really don't matter. Like the benefits are things like because of the focal flange length and distance and so on. You can use other types of things like C-mount lenses and others. You might be able to use such third-party or other types of lenses, but for a beginner filmmaker that is really not a benefit. Instead, what happens is you can use EF lenses on these, or you'll have to buy EF-M type, which are relatively smaller in range. But if you buy the EF lenses for mirrorless cameras, you can use them, but you'll have to buy an adapter. So this means spending more money on an adapter and making your camera setup bulkier and heavier anyway, so thus it negates the smaller sizes benefit of the cameras itself. Well, I have given my reasons on why I believe 60D is such a good solution for being a beginner's filmmaking DSLR camera. Before finishing up, I will just quickly list a few things of the 60D that are awesome and are very valuable for a filmmaker. The 60D has an articulating screen, which is really valuable for a filmmaker because when shooting videos, an articulating screen is really handy. The 60D has a mic input for connecting an external audio solution like a video mic, and it is really useful when you're connecting a video mic and therefore valuable as a filmmaker. The 60D uses the popular LPE6 batteries like I mentioned before, which last quite long and are cheap to buy, especially if you go for good third-party options. The 60D uses normal SD cards, and SD cards as fast as 30 MB per second are enough to record videos, and they come quite cheap. The 60D is a full-fledged DSLR, meaning apart from using it as a filmmaking camera, you can double it and use it as an awesome photography camera as well. The 60D has an APS-C size sensor with 1080p 24p or 30p videos to give you awesome footage. Here you can check out some footage that I shot on the 60D camera, and they look awesome. You can use all of normal Canon's features like picture styles to get even better cinematic footage out of your camera. And lastly, the 60D has a stable Magic Lantern firmware available if you wish to use, therefore giving you a wide array of Magic Lantern features like overlays, meters, audio meters, and other tweaks. So that's that. My strong recommendation for getting a 60D if you're a beginning filmmaker. If you have that extra buck, go for the 70D or 80D, and remember, the footage we shoot are only as good as the person shooting it, so learn and practice, and also remember that a good film is all about good storytelling, but with a 60D you can make sure you get a good looking footage at a good price and with a lot of convenience. So please post your thoughts in the comments section below, and until next time, happy filming and see you all soon.